Hey, welcome to Mystery Monday number 10, the antique store shooting. Today, one of the things that happens in sort of this mystery writing and horror story type writing is that there the author will sometimes like throw extra things in, extra information in to lead you off course, to throw you off. Sometimes they're logical fallacies. Sometimes they're just it's just extra information that maybe isn't applicable to what they're actually driving at. Just an attempt to keep you interested and keep the suspense high. That happens in our story again here today, and I'd like you to. That is one of the questions. Pay attention to what those things are, how the author does that. Here are the questions for the story today. I'm actually going to take and italicize that. What can we infer from the story we can infer from the story that Cam Lindsay will be meticulous, thorough, and detailed in his police work? Why do we know this? Remember, our goal is to make inferences, and inferences, of course, are conclusions we can draw from information we have in the text. Number two, what can we infer about Bentley Thurndale based on his tone of voice, especially in the beginning, kind of looking at the way he talks to Cam Lindsay? And number three, there are many facts, quotes, and realizations that the author uses to attempt to confuse the reader. What sort of things catch your eye, as possible leads to the solutions? Let's do this. Shoot for 3. So then I'll add in. Oh, I don't like that it does this, but I will make sure that there's 1, 2, 3 in there. Answer the following question finally, and this is the solution at the end. Why does Cam Lindsay want a doctor to examine Bentley Thurndale? So that's your goal as you read. So here we are, story number 10, the antique store shooting. Because he was a rookie, Cam Lindsay was determined not to make a single mistake. Also because he was a rookie, he had to go by the book, and the book said quite clearly that any felony, indeed, anything that even looked like a felony, meant that the beat cop, or the first officer on the scene, as Captain Tilley liked to put it, had to call in right away for the senior detective on duty. Cam Lindsay was a beat cop. He had been on daytime foot patrol now for exactly 11 days, his first assignment since graduating from police college. And the scene in front of him said, felony, all right. It was manslaughter at least, possibly murder, and maybe, likely, robbery as well. Cam reached for the radio on his belt, but then stopped. He'd only been here for a few minutes. 1 or 2 more would make no difference. Not to the dead man on the floor, anyway. Besides, 1 more check wouldn't hurt. There was no way he was going to make a mistake. Well, young man, are you going to call your whatever like the other officer said? Or are you just going to stand there? Bentley Thurndale's voice startled Cam just a bit. Or maybe you're just going to stand there and watch poor Morton finish bleeding. Cam looked at the body of Morton Thurndale, then turned uneasily back to the man who had just spoken. Bentley's appearance was counterpoint to the haughtiness of his voice and manner, for he was covered with spilt paint. There was paint in his sandy gray hair and on his gold-rimmed glasses, paint all over the expensive tweed jacket and down the right side of his wheelchair. Blobs of it on his knees were still trickling down his pant legs and filling the creases of his shoes. Even the end of his tie, which stuck out beneath the buttoned jacket, had paint on it. Bentley Thurndale was a random study in Cardona ivory number 2884. 2 pails of it. That was one of the things Cam had already noted. He didn't know why, but he felt it might be more important later. The interior of Thurndale Brothers Incorporated, specialists in furniture and other antiques of the Georgian period, was in the midst of a renovation. The painters had gone on their lunch break before the shooting occurred, and had left the open cans of paint on the scaffold now stood. precariously askew over the whole scene. In the struggle between Morton Thurndale and the intruder, at least according to Bentley, the paint had been knocked over. Morton, too, or rather his body, was covered in paint. In fact, he was lying face down in a pool of Cardona ivory, in which his blood made little patterns and puddles, all interconnected but refusing to blend. A twisting red trail had almost encircled the body from the sandy gray hair to the almost white sneakers. Like an incomprehensible modern painting, had been Cam's first thought, very much out of place in this store. Thurndale Brothers Incorporated was indeed a one-of-a-kind establishment. It was the key business in a street of very trendy, extremely expensive boutiques, although off the street business probably represented only a tiny fraction of the Thurndale income. Most of it, according to the rumor on the street, came from international dealings. Morton and his twin brother Bentley, like their father and grandfather, were among the principal antique dealers on the continent. Only 2 minutes before, Cam and his partner had heard the shots. Two of them, as they were walking down the street past the Thurndale store. Neither of them had looked in earlier. What with all the paintings covered in canvas sheets, there was nothing to see. The store was closed for the renovation period anyway. They had always made it a point to avoid the Thurndale twins, for neither was very pleasant. In fact, according to the briefings from Captain Tilly 11 days ago, the Thurndale twins were indistinguishable in both appearance and personality, and the only way that they could be identified separately was by virtue of the fact that Bentley could not walk. Nothing. He's disappeared, not a trace. I checked the alley both ways. There's no sign of him, but I didn't expect one anyway, Camp's partner said as he came back through the back door. Too bad the paint didn't spill on him, too. Maybe he'd have left tracks. He looked at Cam. Did you call in? I bet Tilly himself will want this one. I was just about to. Cam allowed a little twinge of guilt to show in his voice. Just wanting to make sure we haven't missed anything. What's there to miss? His partner said, somewhat annoyed, while Bentley Thurndale nodded righteous agreement. I told you what happened, he said, pushing his wheelchair back so abruptly he almost hit the scaffold. I told you, the painters weren't gone 5 minutes when this person came through the back door. I know it's supposed to be locked, but it wasn't. Morton was going to set out the garbage. Cam almost spoke, then checked himself. When he heard the shots and came running, the front door of the store had been unlocked, too. As they burst in to find Morton on the floor and Bentley leaning from the wheelchair holding his brother's wrist. Cam had noted the back door was wide open. He hadn't known about the garbage. He came right up through the door, Bentley continued, right up to Morton. I told you all of this. He had this gun, and he and Morton began to fight. That's why there's paint all over. Then he shot, twice. Poor Morton, I couldn't help him. By the time you got here, he was dead and the man was gone. Look, how much longer do I have to sit here? Can I go? I can't do anything here anyway. Cam pulled out his radio. No, he said. You'll have to stay at least until Captain Tilly gets here and until a doctor examines you. Why does Cam Lindsay want a doctor to examine Bentley Thurndale? So here's the worksheet again. And the first question says, what can we infer from the story that we can infer from the story that Cam Lindsay will be meticulous, thorough, and detailed in his police work. How do we know this? Well, I think that becomes quite obvious in the first paragraph, and then he maintains that throughout. So if you're struggling to find that answer, take a look at the first paragraph. Kind of sets up exactly who he is and how he got there and why he's that way. Question number 2. What can we infer about Bentley Thurndale's based on his tone of voice? Well, let's go back to the story. We get our first impression of Bentley here with this last line, and he's referring to the detective that Cam Lindsay's supposed to call. He says, well, young man, are you going to call your whatever, like the other officer said, or are you just going to stand there? And then he goes on to say, or maybe you're just going to stand there and watch poor Morton finish bleeding. We later learn, too, that Bentley Thurndale is not too pleasant much like his father and grandfather, the story says. There are many facts and quotes, this is number 3 now. Facts, quotes, realizations that the author uses to attempt to confuse the reader. What things catch your eye as possible leads to the solution? Shoot for 3. Well, the first one that catches my eye has to do with what kind of paint it is. It's ivory number 2884. Um, that's something that just doesn't seem, that's a specific detail that doesn't seem to matter um, in the end. But maybe it does. I don't know. They seem to go away from that a lot. Something that does seem to matter is the fact that they're twins. I can't point to exactly why yet, but the fact that they're twins, um, and then obviously the only difference, and this is another very, very specific detail, is that uh, one of them can't walk. Bentley can't walk. And then I gotta believe that the author made Bentley sort of arrogant, um, and short, and clearly, thinks he's better than this cop, or because he calls him a young man. Like you can tell that he's young and he's just getting started in his career, so he kind of treats him as such. And there's got to be a reason that the author created that personality and tone for the characters. So I think there's 3. There are others there, but there's 3 that you can take a look.
Cam Lindsay suspects that Bentley Thurndile may really be Morton Thurndile, although they are identical twins, or at least sufficiently identical to fool all but the most careful examination. It is Bentley who cannot walk and must use a wheelchair. Yet Cam saw the paint dripping from Bentley or Morton's pant legs into the creases of his shoes. Someone who does not walk would not have creases in his shoes.
Look at. And finally answering the following question: why does Cam Lindsay want a doctor to examine Bentley Thurndile?
You already answered this question, but now that you've seen the solution, how would your answer change? What would you add to your original answer? And lastly, according to our scale, where would you rate your ability to cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support an analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as make those inferences, including where the text leaves matters uncertain? Those places where the author just assumes that we're supposed to know things, or we're supposed to make that logical leap. Would you put yourself at a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1? You'll notice that in the solution, and in the part that the close reading part that we had, we looked specifically at the creases in the one brother's shoes. And if you did not make that connection, that hey, creases in shoes equal walking, you can only get creases in your shoes if you walked. If you didn't make that connection, you didn't make an inference. You did not pick up where the text left matters uncertain. So you're kind of down in this 2-3 range at best. You can't have been at a 4 given that you did not pick that answer up.